Hello and welcome. This is the second part of the series on color work in Tunisian crochet, and today we will be looking at free color Tunisian crochet and intarsia and stranded color work. So if this is your first time, thank you very much for stopping by. My name is Mirka and I make stitch and pattern crochet and Tunisian crochet tutorials. So if this is of your interest, please consider subscribing, hit the like button, and without further ado, let's dive in. The first type of color work that we will be looking at today is the free color Tunisian crochet. So during the first lesson, we learned some basic techniques how to change color at the beginning of the row, at the end of the row, midway, to create a different stitch and color patterns. So this is a slight upgrade from this. So while before we were working with 2 colors, today we will look at how to work with 3 colors. So for this tutorial, I've got 3 colors in Paint Box Simply Chunky. And you would start your project with any number of stitches, or rather any number of chains for any number of stitches. So first we'll make a slip knot, insert the hook, and let's chain about 8. Okay, let's make it 10. Okay, then we turn our work around and we will work into the back bumps of chain stitches. So if this is too fast, if the pace is too fast for you, I would recommend that you find my tutorial on the basic stitches, either individually or how to start a Tunisian crochet project, or my masterclass series. So I will link those in the description below, where you can go and look at the videos which show the process a bit slower. So we are picking up stitches in the back bumps. 1 of the chains equals 1 stitch, so we started with 10 chains and we should have 10 stitches on our hook. So now here we're going to start changing colors on the return pass. So again, when you add the loops on the hook, that's your forward pass, and then when you work this loop off your hook, that's a return pass. So normally you would start your return pass with chain 1. However, we are going to do something slightly different here because we will be adding color. So I'm going to add this peach as my second color, and I'm going to show you a little trick. If you start adding the color with the chain 1, the edge of your work would be quite messy. So here you can see that the edge is not very neat. So what we are going to do, we are going to do a little trick using our first color, or color A, however you like to call it, and we will add a loop. So again, we will add the loop by placing the yarn from front to back. This will add another loop on the hook. So when we pick up our second color, we will yarn over and pull through 2. So that's your yarn over, pull through 2, and you will continue in the pattern yarn over, pull through 2. All the way to the beginning. Now this is where we are going to add our third color. So when you get to change your color at the beginning of the row, It's really at the end of return pass, but this would count as the beginning of the next row, and I'll explain to you why in a moment. You would change the color when you are on the last 2 loops of your return pass. You would place the yarn on the hook and pull through these 2. So why do I call this at the beginning of your row? The reason why is that when you add the loop while you have the 2 loops from your return pass on the hook, this will make up the first stitch of your forward pass. So you really didn't change at the end, because if you changed at the end after this last 2 loops in the gray, you would yarn over pull through 2 with peach, and then you would try to change the color. You would have the first loop in peach. That's why we change it at the end of the return pass, but it's really for the beginning of the next row. So once we have our 3rd color added, we will continue working a forward pass in Tunisian simple stitch, or really in any stitch pattern. I'm just demonstrating in Tunisian simple stitch because it's the easiest one. So we will work Tunisian simple stitch, which is inserting the hook from right to left under the front vertical bar, yarn over, pull up a loop, and we would repeat that until the end of the row. Again, we will work up to last stitch. Then for the very last stitch, we insert the hook under both strands of the gray, yarn over, pull up a loop, and again, to make the side or the edge of your work on the left side neat, we will add extra loop with the blue color. And now we are picking up gray, so we pick up gray, yarn over, pull through 2, and we continue in the same pattern, yarn over, pull through 2, all the way to beginning until we have the last 2 loops on there. And then the color which is here is peach, so we yarn over, pull through 2 with peach. As you can see, the first stitch is now in peach. We would continue working Tunisian simple stitches in peach, and once we get to the end of the row, we work under the 2 strands of blue, yarn over, pull up a loop, and add an extra loop by yarning over. The strand that is currently here is blue, so we pick up blue, yarn over, pull through 2, and so on. So what we are doing, we are changing colors at the beginning of every pass. Okay, so we start with color A, work the forward pass, get to the end of the forward pass, change to color B, work the return pass. Once you get to the end of the return pass, change to color C, and you are changing your color at every edge of your work. Okay, and then I'm just going to demonstrate how you would bind off for completeness. So this is a really small swatch, so your project will be probably wider and longer as well, depending on what you are making. But once you get to the end and you decide that that's it, there's not going to be any more rows in your project, then you need to bind off. Because I was working this small swatch in Tunisian simple stitch, I'm going to bind off in Tunisian simple stitch, and there are other options if you work different stitches or stitch patterns. So we are going to depending on which color you prefer to bind off in. So I'm just going to continue with the blue, but you might decide that you would like to, for example, go back to gray and have the bind off in the same color as you chained initially. So actually I'm going to do it in the gray just for it to be more visible. Okay, so we are going to insert the hook into the next or under the next front vertical bar, as if we are going to do Tunisian simple stitch. So we yarn over, pull up a loop, but instead of keeping the loop there, we will pull it through the loop which is already on the hook. Okay, so there's only one loop left on the hook, and we repeat this for the rest of the stitches in your row, all the way to the end, including the edge stitch, or the end stitch rather. Okay, so as you can see, the top of your work, the bind off, matches quite nicely the bottom, and you are creating this beautiful three color effect of having every forward pass and every return pass in a different color. So there you go, and this is what I created. There's obviously more stitches and more rows. So as you can see, if you select colors which go well together, the color combinations that are there are just stunning. It will be really beautiful for baby blanket or for a shawl, something like that. And that's how you work 3-color Tunisian crochet. So next we are going to look at Intarsia and stranded color work. We look at how to work Intarsia and stranded color work. So with these techniques you can create a beautiful colored effects. So for example, on this heart I used both of the techniques. So let's have a look at the wrong side of the project. So as you can see from the beginning here, as I started working the heart, I carried the strands at the back of my work, and now at some point then I decided that I had enough of carrying over the yarn through the project for various reasons that I will explain, and then I added another strand of the dark pink, and I worked the rest of the heart up to this point using Intarsia. So let's get right into it. Let's look at how to do that. So I've already prepared a small swatch here. So if you are not sure how to do it, please find my video on Tunisian simple stitch and how to start your project. So I'm at the point where I would like to add some blue into the project. So first I'm going to work a few Tunisian simple stitches, and let's say at this point I want to add the blue. So again I create a loop, I go into the stitch as if I was working Tunisian simple stitch, place the loop on the hook, work the stitch. Now I'm only going to add the one, and then in the next row I will work 3 stitches with the same color. So what is happening at the back here, as you can see, these colors are next to each other but they are not joined. So what we need to do when we work a color, we need to wrap the strands around, either over or under, just to make sure that the strands of yarn are connected, and this is to avoid a holes in your project. If you don't put one strand over another, then at the places or at the points where you joined a new color, you will have a holes. So that's why every time we join a color, we cross the strands to close the gaps. Okay, so now I'm going back to my page. I work the stitch, and we do that on forward and return pass as well. So I'm going to continue working in page. Now we are getting into the part of the project where we need to change the color. So when you work these techniques, you need to change the color to the alternate color when the second loop from your hook is in the alternative color. Okay, so now I've got 2 loops on the hook. The second one from the beginning is in blue, so I need to now drop the peach, I cross it over, pick up the blue, yarn over, pull through 2. Because I only had 1 stitch in blue, I'll need to do again the same, drop blue, pick up the peach, I cross them over and continue working in peach. Now, as you can see, there is a slight gap here, so it's just a cosmetic issue. You just need to pull the strand of yarn, but you don't want to pull it too tight, otherwise the stitches get too close and you will have a visible, you will have kind of like a spot there on the project where you can see that you've changed the color. So you can do the same with the short end as well, just gently tug on it to avoid any gaps. And now we are going to go back, working forward pass. And now I decided that I want to add more color into the project, so I'm not going to work only 1 stitch. I'm going to widen it as if I was working the heart that I showed you on the project. So again, I'm dropping peach and picking up blue, and I'm crossing the strands of yarn at the back. So I work 1 stitch, second and third in blue. You can see I've got a gap here, so I pull on the peach to bring the stitches closer together. I drop blue, pick up peach, crossing over, and continue working your stitches. Okay, and as you can guess, this technique is called stranded color work because you've got strands of the different colors at the back of your work. Okay, so this technique is fairly okay if you are creating a small color effect, just something of a few stitches, 3, 5, 7 stitches and so on. I wouldn't really go more than that, because as you are carrying the yarn, the strands of yarn at the back, this part of the project is thicker in comparison to the rest of your project, and it can bulk up. Another issue is that if you don't keep this, if you pull on the strands too tight, it will pull that section of your project in and it will be quite visible. So I recommend this technique, the stranded color work, on color effects which are only a few stitches wide. Okay, so now we are going to go back and I will show you how to, on the next row, I will show you how to trap the strands, because if you've got if you are working over, let's say, from about 3, 5, 7 stitches, then you will get a float which get loose, which might not be issue on some projects like home decor projects. It wouldn't be a really issue because it would be on the inside, let's say pillows. But if you have a baby blankets, you don't really want to have a strands or loose floats at the back that are too long, because those little fingers can get trapped in those. So we don't want to do that. We wouldn't want to do that. So I'm going to show you how to do the trapping. So as you can see, I've got 3 stitches here, and I carry the peach over these 3 stitches. Now, if you have a lighter yarn, it might not be an issue. But for example, with this chunky yarn, you can already see then this float is quite large, and I can put my finger under there, let alone a baby. So what are we going to do now? We will work a few stitches in peach, and let's add another blue at each end. Okay, so I'm going to add blue at each end to end up with 5 stitches in blue. So what we are going to do now, this is how we are going to trap the loose floats at the back. So we are going to work go into the stitch as if we were going to work Tunisian simple stitch. Okay, and now we also go under the float. So we go into the Tunisian simple at the front, and then we also take in the loose strands at the end. We yarn over, pull up a loop. So that is one part of how we trap the floats. The second part is now that we go back into the next stitch, Tunisian simple stitch, and working under and over the loose float traps it. So as you can see, this blue yarn created a kind of like a yarn over it. So this is how we trap it, and by this we halved the loose float. So now it will be rather difficult to put your finger under there. I can't even do it. So if you've got a longer float, let's say 5 or 6 stitches, you would do that twice. So when I work stranded color work, I usually trap my floats every 3 stitches. 2 is quite a lot of work, so you don't get so much benefit for constantly going under and over the strands of yarn at the end. 4 is kind of too large, so the sweet spot is over 3 stitches. So every 3 stitches you would trap your floats. Okay, so now I'm going to work 2 more stitches in blue, take the peach and finish off. Again, as you can see, I always cross over the strands of yarn, not to create a gaps where I change color. Okay, you can see now the floating peach is even longer. So now I'm going to go back on the return pass, continue changing color, and on the next row we will see how to now go from stranded color work to Intarsia. Okay, now, so when you work smaller motifs, for example this, it's not really worth splitting your yarn in the ball if you want to work these sections on the side in a different color. Okay, so basically what Intarsia means that you are changing colors at each point where you changing from one color to another, and it's connected to a different ball of yarn. So sometimes if you have too many or quite a few color motifs, you would measure up the approximate amount of yarn that you need for this, and then for the rest of the project. If you've got something smaller like this, then I would just work from the outside and inside of your yarn ball. I wouldn't really go as far as measuring out smaller yarn balls and winding them up. So what I'm going to do, so I'm just going to let this other end loose on my yarn just to demonstrate how to do that. So now we work the first few stitches from the side of the yarn ball that we started. Now we change to blue, which is fine. Continue in blue, but instead of carrying the peach all the way through the 5 stitches of blue, I'm going to drop this and I'm going to pick up the other end of the peach. Okay, and work the stitches here. So again, I need to make sure that I cross over the peach to avoid gaps, and I work the rest of my stitches from the other side of the yarn ball. Okay, and as you can see, while before in the row below I was still carrying over those 5 stitches, creating these loose floats, on this row I don't have any float because I started with another, let's say, ball of yarn, or the other end of the yarn ball with the peach. Okay, so now this technique is really useful if you want to avoid the loose floats, and also because you are not carrying the yarn over this section. It has got the same thickness that, throughout the project, while with the strand color work, the section which has got the strands going over in different colors is a bit thicker. And on the return pass, when working Intarsia, you would use the same technique as we've talked about so far. So you will work stitches in one color, and when you need to change, you will again cross over, pick up the other strands, work the number of stitches in the alternative color. Again, we are coming to the section where we need to change, so we cross over, and continue working in the new color. Okay, so this is how you work Intarsia in Tunisian crochet. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this tutorial on the color work in Tunisian crochet useful. Please let me know in the comments section below if you knew all these techniques, how to work them, if you've ever made any project using these techniques, and what would you like me to cover next. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.